Hello, good evening, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another week of intense racing action in the iRacing official Porsche Cup by CONSPIT, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. That's right, we are back here once again for another week of strength-filled race action in the iRacing official Porsche Cup, and what a week we have ahead of us today, because as we made our way into week 5 of 2026 season 1, we have made our way all the way to France for none other than the Circuit des 24 Hours du Mans. The infamous circuit has played host for over 100 years to the annual 24-hour race ever since 1923. It is a circuit which spans 8.46 miles, and one where the question is, can you outlast the test that the circuit will place on both you, the driver, and also your machine? Those who are able to survive it, they may just be able to enter their name into the history books as a legend who has taken on Le Mans and won. But meanwhile, those who cannot, they will be consigned to the past, and with it to defeat. But we will see today who's going to be the quickest of them all here at Le Mans, as we welcome you all to our regular strength-filled race from the 21:45 Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinate Time UTC time slot. But where are my manners? Welcome to you all as you tune in on YouTube, and tune in tonight, of course, we say hello to you on the YouTube channel of none other than Paul Walsh Productions, or PWP. Go into YouTube and search that, and you can catch these weekly strength-filled race broadcasts from this series, and well, don't be shy, feel free to say hi as we get ready to go racing. In the content booth, you have myself, my name is Paul Walsh, and I'll be bringing you all your racing action on a weekly basis. And in terms of our racing for tonight, well, as we can see in approximately 4 minutes' time, we'll be making our way to the grid for our 7-lap race here. We'll get to see all our drivers take on the legendary Le Mans circuit. But as we make our way into this week, well, let's give you a recap of the season so far and what we've got lying in wait. Because as we can see, last time out on the 10th of January, it was the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache that we saw our drivers take to the tarmac there and absolutely give it their all for glory, albeit in Brazil. Whilst it may have been our lowest strength fulfill compared to all the others of this season, I can tell you one thing, with 23 of our 25 drivers being new to the grid, well, nobody wasted any time in having a very close race, and we also got to see our closest ever finish of the victory in the strength field broadcast so far in their history, with only 0.021 seconds between winner Sandro Cialetti and Nikolai Milder. But will we see even closer today, given the fact we've got an even lower strength fulfilled today due to the conflict with the iRacing official 24 Hours of Daytona. But then again, plenty of fresh faces, plenty of new blood, and therefore plenty of opportunities to be in the spotlight. But after this round in a week's time, we'll be making our way to Road Atlanta. And so how the Division 1 standings stand after what is 4 weeks of racing? Well, it is Oscar Burnson who leads by a growing margin there over Aaron Jones, with Isaac Phelps completing the top 3. Hayden Massey sits in 4th ahead of Igor Koz, with Liam McNeely, Thomas Ronhar, Olivier Piatek, Tobias Olsen, and Deegan Fairclough completing your top 10 in Division 1, but it's Burnson right now who everybody's got to try and play catch up to. But as we come into this round as well, let's talk a little bit about our circuit for today. And of course, it is none other than the Circuit des 24 Hours du Mans. A circuit which has gone through 15 iterations to get to this one. This is number 15, as it's actually known. If you do go through the books, you'll find that this is known as the 24-hour Du Mans, number 15. And as our drivers make their way out onto this 8.46 mile circuit, or 13.62 kilometres in length, they'll find that these 33 corners are not going to leave anything unquestioned when it comes to drivability. This is a high-speed circuit at first. It's got extended straights, but it's also got some very heavy braking zones. But adding to that as well, it's sweeping bends and it's low-speed chicanes. And for our drivers here, it really is going to be a test of endurance, even if this is just a 7-lap sprint race. So exactly who's going to come out on top? Well, we'll have to see. But before we can go back to circuit side and see how they're getting on in qualifying, of course, there's just one thought we need to have, and that is, what are the rules? So let's give you a recap. And as we can see, this is the open setup version of the iRacing official Porsche Cup Series sponsored by CONSPIT, while drivers bring a setup of their choosing to each and every race session, whether it be practice, qualifying, or the race. But when we do head to the grid for our race, the grid shall be set via a closed qualifying session, which is currently ongoing. 2 laps available to our drivers. It's a slightly different one, and we'll explain why shortly. It's not quite your conventional closed qualifying session today. And so how the race commences, it commences via a standing start, as is the tradition of Porsche Cup racing in these Porsche 9 and 2.2 Cup cars. And drivers will receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points. Should they get to 25, they will be disqualified, but hopefully we don't see that. Without further ado, let's head back to circuit side, ladies and gentlemen. And as our drivers are mostly already on to their second flying laps, well, the reason we can say that within 8 minutes of a qualifying session, they are already onto their second flying lap is because, simply put, what our drivers are able to do here, essentially, is when they make their way out into circuit, they don't start from the pit lane. They actually start from the exit point of what is the Porsche curves onto the Corvette curves. So approximately what would be turn number 27. And in doing so, their out lap, or their warm-up lap, is just the final, what is approximately 0.6 miles of the circuit. And then they go straight into their first flying lap, which they'll treat as a banker. And it's the second lap where they've got it all to do. But you'll find that some drivers opt to use what will be their warm-up lap, or the initial lap to get themselves set up, and then go all in for the second one. But not so for Adam Morgan, unfortunately. Indeed, several drivers who seem to be parked up and have not had a good qualifying session, Adam Morgan being one of them. And I do have to wonder whether that is the same Adam Morgan of British Touring Car Championship fame. If it is, well, we've got some stars in this grid today, ladies and gentlemen. But I can tell you one thing, in terms of our strength of field, it is the lowest we've seen this season of 3,558. Understandably, because of the fact that we are clashing with the iRacing official Daytona 24-hour event. However, as we do look to the license details of our drivers there on the timing tower, in fact, I think we can get you a little bit more detail than that. And there we go, Salvatore Giuliano parks up. Well, what we can see is right now your number one driver is not just in terms of number one in his iRating, but also he is currently on provisional pole position. It is none other than what is Keanu Liutard, who right now is on pole by a whole second ahead of Eduardo Cavalcanti. And well, as our drivers start to make their way back into the pit lane, this qualifying session is almost done and dusted. Nobody else is actually trying to put a lap together right now, as Harley Keeble, meanwhile, is not going to have enough time here with only 20 seconds left on the clock. And John Bailiff, in fact, squeezes a lap in right at the end there, puts himself 8th on a 3-minute 55.835. But something tells me we might have a lot of drivers here essentially have to start this race with no valid qualifying lap, but not so for Keanu Liutard, who is going to take pole position. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, 8 minutes is up. It's time to head to the grid for our one and only race. So as our drivers make the way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up then for the Week 5 Strength of Field race for the 2026 Season 1 campaign of the iRacing official Porsche Cup by CONSPIT. It is Keanu Liutard from France on his home soil who has taken pole position, is looking to go for gold. He'll be joined in the company of the Taiwanese driver there, none other than Eduardo Cavalcanti. And then we do have Joel Marquardt starting third, back on the grid once again. The German driver is in the company of his neighbouring driver there, of Jan Still. And then we do have Richard Marsh starting fifth from the United Kingdom, ahead of the Moroccan driver of Ahmed Ait Abed. Then in seventh, it'll be Adam Klanvik, and the Ice Cold Racing powered by Maxim Racing driver will be looking to go all in here. We know he's a very quick driver at Le Mans when he can be. And then we do have starting 8th alongside him, John Bailiff there for Win It or Bin It Racing. Then it's going to be starting 9th, none other than Tim Fleischhauer. He'll be joined on that row by Simon Bamber for Effect Simulations, who makes his way back onto the grid once again. And then we do say starting 11th, Felix Mexiner, ahead of Octavian Torquea. Then for the Romanian driver, it's going to be the Swede of Jakob Karlsson, ahead of Harley Keeble, and then Sean Fortier and Lucas Tapak will round off your 8th row. On row number 9, we are going to have the pair in there, Salvatore Giuliano and Rafael Tardelli, and then from them, behind them, completing what will be your top 20, it is Adam Morgan and Felix Proteau. Outside that top 20 then, starting 21st, we are going to have Ivan Alpatov ahead of Jack Craft, and it'll be Stephen Calvert ahead of Adam Mika. And last but not least, starting 25th, ladies and gentlemen, on the exit of the final corner, it will be Samuel Shepherd, 25th of all of our starters. And well, this grid is almost set, and we've got plenty of fresh faces here looking to do battle. And well, we look forward to seeing how over the course of what will be a 7-lap race they all do get on. But as the last couple of cars find themselves into position, it's Liutard on the right of your picture, Cavalcanti on the left. But will it be that way by the time they've exited the Dunlop chicane at turns 2 and 3? Well, we're about to find out. So as the lights go on, it's going to be 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And drop the hammer, it's lights down, away we go as the drivers roar away. Now immediately there, Cavalcanti getting a better start compared to Liutard as they roar the way in towards the Dunlop curve. 2 wide they're going to enter. Phil behind is going 3 wide there in the fight for 5th place. And as they come through now, well, Cavalcanti's going to take the lead nice and early, as Jean Marquardt has to go battling with Steele. The 2 German drivers there still side by side as they make the way in towards the chicane. And they'll exit side by side as well, but keeping it respectful. Further back there, we've got some fighting going on in the mid-pack. Everyone's safely on through the opening few quarters, albeit Shepherd has picked up a drive-through penalty for a jump start. So the 24th place driver will be dropping all the way to the back of the field. He'll have to come into the pits at the end of this lap, but still he might be able to get back into the fight later on, depending on any instance. But meanwhile, we've got side by side there between Felix Proto and Guilano, as meanwhile Guilano does fall behind there Proto, and Proto moves up into 17th place, getting 3 places already as they all come through Texture Road. And now onto the Mulsanne straight for the first time. This is now where it becomes a very strategic race from this point onwards, because you've got the toe, you haven't got the ability to break away. And here it's all about positioning yourself for what is 4 long stretches of tarmac as they make the way from the dedicated racing circuit onto the public road. But here they roar all the way down towards the first of the chicanes. And as they do, Leotard has got back ahead of Cavalcanti. That's to perhaps be expected. But further behind, Bailiff, they're enjoying a bit of a scrap with Torsier and also Fleischhauer as they make the way to the brakes. Oh, that's trying to go round. As meanwhile, Bailiff goes very tight there. Takes the run-off road. He's going to get a little nudge on the back there from Klamvik, who tries to push him along. But somehow they all survive that. Albeit we do have yellow flags. That's slowdowns in effect. iRacing automated slowdowns that must be served within 30 seconds. Otherwise, they'll be upgraded to drive-through penalties. And that's slowdowns there for Bailiff and also for Fleischhauer and also for Bamba further back. So that's going to relegate them down the orders. The whole field fans out here. They're all trying to do those slowdowns whilst also keeping themselves close to the pack. And this is going to lead to a little bit of pandemonium into the braking zone here for the second chicane. They all coming in, and somehow, despite all of that, all the drivers go 2-3 wide. Bamba makes contact there. That was with, I believe, Alpatov. No, not Alpatov there. My apologies. That was none other than what is Samuel Shepherd and Adam Morgan both being caught up. But Adam Morgan was the casualty in that one between himself and Bamba. And Shepherd, meanwhile, has still got that black flag to serve. But meanwhile, towards the back of the field, Kraft and Mika fight each other here, coming down towards Mulsanne Corner, named after the fact it makes its way into Mulsanne Village. And as they come onto the brakes here, well, the local residents are definitely going to be woken up if they weren't already awake. Onto the brakes they go, and Alpatov versus Mika. It's going to be Mika trying to hold that inside line. But Alpatov there runs around the outside, and that will give them the track position initially. But now they've got the long run down towards Indianapolis. This is where they'll need to sort out the positions, because it's going to be a hard right sweeper into what is a much slower left-hander. And right now, Leotard and Cavalcanti at the front of the field, what we're looking at, well, they've brought Steele, Macquad and Abed alongside them. Into those braking zones they go, and these drivers right now all staying nose to tail. Then you do have your rest of the field pack, which is sent downwards with Octavian Tara, and oh goodness me, that's around there. That's a big spin for Klamvik. He goes around, the car rolls back onto the road, and for Adam Klamvik there, I think he tried to hold his brakes. In the rear of the picture, that's a spin for Shepherd. Shepherd goes round. It's pandemonium as Morgan meanwhile tries to split the seas between the two, and he brings Sean Fortier along with him, but in towards what is Arnage they come. Those two survive it, but for Adam Klamvik, it has been a nightmare middle portion of the race, as it has been for so many on this opening lap. And well, we'll have to take a look back at what happened there shortly as we say hello to Phil McDougall in the YouTube chat. Good evening to you, good sir. As these drivers right now will make the way towards the Porsche curves. Well, now we go from straights in every braking zones in towards sweeping bends and chicanes. And they're told right now, well, Cavalcanti right behind. These two are definitely now starting to pull away little by little here. They are growing the gap, and I think the confidence is definitely growing between them. As meanwhile, the rest of the field has got to now try and play catch-up. However, should they be able to stay within 1 second by the time they get through Tete Rouge on the next lap, they will definitely be there. So, as they come through the 4 chicanes, we've got plenty more laps to come. And the P1 Docks machine of Keanu Leutard leads the race, ahead of Eduardo Cavalcanti, who's second. Then it's Jan Steele, who rounds off your top 3. Jan Marquardt, the fellow German driver, sits in 4th, ahead of Amit Abed, who's in 5th. Then we do have Richard Marsh completing your top 6. Then it's a gap of 5.5 seconds to Felix Menixer in 7th place, ahead of Jakob Carlson. And then we do have Octavian Torsier, the Romanian driver, battling with Lucas Tepish. And well, we can see here the pack going up the inside of him, and Torsier letting it go for now as they come through the Dunlop curve. Break on there for Torsier, making his way through the curve intriguingly. A very comfortable car, but cuts the apex way too much at turn number 2. That's going to be a slow down, and Indian Harley Keeble tries to go around the outside of him on exit. And well, there's contact between the two of them, and in the end, Keeble turned around into the barrier as he gets his own car turned back round, but he goes for a spin there with no rear wing as well. I can imagine that car right now is not going to feel comfortable to drive, and there's going to be a lot of frustration behind the wheel. So he'll have to get rid of the red mist and realise that right now, missing his rear wing, that's going to be a car that's definitely not going to feel comfortable for the remainder of the race. But that's what happened, and well, John Bailiff now moves up into 11th place ahead of Jack Craft, as Craft falls back a little bit there, losing out of Tete Rouge. But now to the Mulsanne they go for the second of 7 times. But as they roaring down, well, Proto ahead of Calvert and Guilano. They're all still just going line astern at the moment, all trying to figure out where they are in this pecking order. But something tells me at some point we are definitely going to see what is right now a bit of a jump back and forth between these drivers. Start to get that little bit more violent here, where suddenly it is going to be true elbows out racing. But we will wait for it. It will gradually build up to it over time. As they make their way onto the second part of the Mulsanne. Well, meanwhile, at the very front, we do see Conor Leotard. Right now, well, he's got a Cavalcanti keeping him honest, and they're trying to break away from Stewart and Marquardt behind, but understandably, the two German drivers are trying to make sure that the Taiwanese driver and the Frenchman do not get to bump draft each other away here, and that's going to be the aim of the game at this point. You work with the guy in front of you, you push them along. That's what bump drafting is. You catch up to them, and very gently, with about a 1 to 2 mile an hour speed difference, you tap them on the rear bumper, and you transfer that speed to the car in front. It's a technique that's seen in NASCAR when they race on the flat, and you'll see it here down the Mulsanne. These Porsche Cup cars will push each other along, but onto the brakes they come, and as they do, then a further 2 seconds back, you do have Abed and Marsh together here in the all-red machine. So therefore, that's why you're seeing this complexion. We've got 2 pairs of 2 at the front, and then another pair a little bit further behind, but they're all trying to bring each other back together, apart from your top 2, who just want to try and run away from this as quickly as they possibly can and make it a 2-way fight for the win in the end. Then you have the rest of the field right now. There it all is, as that's a big spin in the rear of the picture. Who's that who's gone around? And that, I believe, is a big spin there for none other than what is, I believe, well, that's the car of Ivan Alpatov who's gone around as Adam Morgan makes his way past him. And Morgan right now trying to catch up to the cars in front as Alpatov finally gets himself back pointed in the right direction, but not before Holly Keeble gets closer as well, and we're grateful for that. But we do have plenty of 2-way fighting going on now. Just outside of the top 15 here, it's going to be Salvatore Quilano, who's trying to break into the top 15 versus Jack Kraft, as Kraft comes in very hot there under braking in towards Indianapolis, and well, he's all over the back of Fleischhauer now as they head in towards Arnage Bend. But looking up the inside there, and right now that's going to be a move being made from Quilano, but we've had a car go very much around there. Couldn't quite see who it was. Oh, there it comes back onto our screen. That's Octavian Torcia, and the remaining driver right now, he's gone one way then the other. How on earth has he managed to achieve that? Well, the good news is we've got a replay of some of our big moments from the early stage of the race coming up. We're going to get to the end of lap number 2, and then we're going to take a trip back in time, ladies and gentlemen, because there's definitely been some moments of drama in this one, albeit you're always going to have a bit of drama at Le Mans, whether it's in a sprint race or a full 24-hour event. But as our leaders and come towards the end of lap number 2, well, what's quite noticeable here is that now our leader has put a 1.3 second gap between himself and Cavalcanti, and right now Leotard might be able to break away. If he can get that gap up to 2 seconds, he will make a clear break, and then it comes down to who's got the better pace to win this race rather than who can master the art of the draft. As we have a fastest lap set by our leader, that's to be expected, of course, a fastest lap on lap number 2, but the delta there being the best part of a whole second to Cavalcanti. So Leotard is going right now. He is going absolutely full throttle here to make the break. And a 1.53 second gap now coming out of the Dunlop chicane. He may just get this done by the time he gets to Tête Rouge. If he does, this race may be over for Cavalcanti unless Leotard makes a mistake of his own. Jan Still and Marquardt still trying to chase down the second place man, as Lucas Tapak, meanwhile, he looks to get on the back of Felix Mixner. But as they come in towards the sweeping S's here, well, you can see the Simcoe sponsored machine right now, the Dark Wing Racing Purple, making its way in towards what will be Tête Rouge. And, well, Mixner really under too much pressure here, given the fact they've now got the long straightaways. I think he would prefer is to fact, if he's going to go for a move, he does it here rather than earlier in the lap, and so he will do. Or will he? No, he goes for the bump draft instead. It's the smarter move here because he wants to move in closer to Jakob Karlsson, and that will help bring them all together just that little bit more, and then they can start going hunting after Richard Marsh, who is, of course, in that fight with Abed for 5th place. Albeit that gap being 9 seconds here, as now into that braking zone they get ready to go, and Tapak completely backs off there and lets Karlsson and Mixner fight each other instead. Door-to-door contact between the two. That's going to see both drivers there lose a little bit of speed, but that's the battle they've chosen. And now Tapak is going to try and look round the outside here as they make the way on down. And as they do, continue to build up, and well, pushing along right now. Tapak trying to squeeze his way around the outside there of Karlsson's car. He'll be able to do that eventually at this rate of knots. That's the power of the draft here, and these drivers right now all running the bare minimum wing they can get away with. And boy, it does seem to be right now everyone's gone for the top speed, so it's going to come down to who's the smarter one on strategy here. And onto the brakes they go, and Tapak backs off in the end, and well, definitely a lot of inspiration here with regards to Japanese machinery in terms of what is quite a few anime inspired liveries on the cars, even though these are German machines, they're Porsche racing machines, but right now definitely got a Japanese vibe going on in the mid-pack here. But onwards they go towards what will be Mulsanne corner, and as they do, we look back to your 14th place driver of Tim Fleischhauer, who right now is on the back of Jack Kraft, Proteau and Bamber, and Simon Bamber for Effect Simulations at this point. Well, playing it straight here, and I think he's trying to catch up to the top 10 if he can. However, it looks though Proto's got other ideas. He looks around the outside. Number 15 driver there goes quite deep, and in fact goes so deep in the end as Bamber goes deep himself. And in the end, a bit of a door rub and a lot of gravel being kicked up, and Kraft will pick up a slowdown for that. Albeit I think he would argue that's not a slowdown he should have picked up because of the contact with Bamber, but still, that's the way the shooting system has seen it go, and therefore he'll have to accept it. There's no buts or ifs on this one. But as they head in towards Indianapolis corner, well, right now the fighting here for what will be the first spot outside the top 10 is getting incredibly fierce, the best of the rest accolade as we call it, and well, Bamber an increase in pressure and fly shower, as meanwhile that's going to be Proto now looking inside to outside versus Fortier, and Fortier is holding him back for now. Proto is not going to be able to find his way through, although he's definitely getting very eager here. I think he's got a bit to say to Bamber when he gets closer to him, if he can. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, as things settle down for a brief moment, we take a look back at some of the big moments in the opening 2 laps of the race. And it all started with an incident for Adam Morgan here. This was into the second of the Mulsanne chicanes. Now made his way under the brake, and you'll look at Simon Bamber to the left of him, and Bamber in the end just collects him on the inside there onto the apex curb, and that's what sent Morgan on the round. And it also saw what was a bit of a stop there for none other than Samuel Shepherd, who had a black flag for a full start. Then we saw this for Rafael Tardelli, who made his way in towards Indianapolis curve, but as he did so, onto the brakes he went. 2 wide, but then 1 wide, tapped on the rear there by Proto, and in the end sent to the gravel, and that car was going nowhere but to the pit lane afterwards. That was a big shunt there, and a very unfortunate one at that. We saw this for Octavian Torsier, also Indianapolis. What went wrong for this man? He disappeared, then reappeared essentially from the camera. Went into the corner, full pelt, and in a tap to the rear there. That was a tap from Adam Klanvik. So that explains why they both went round. So Klanvik went round, Torsier meanwhile survived it, and then coming into this corner, went to turn in, made contact there with the Darkwing Racing machine, and as they all came out, will survive that just about. Goodness me, that was definitely a huge moment. This was the onboard from Adam Klanvik's perspective. Man at the time with the Romanian driver, and as he made his way and came too hot, I don't know if he was pushed himself there, but either way, Klanvik going around, and well, he'll be absolutely fuming about that one. He had to tow to the pit shortly afterwards. On lap 2, we saw this for Harley Keeble as he battled his way up the hill into the Dunlop chicane, fighting with none other than what was Torsier on the exit, and well, in the end, the 2 cars came together, and Keeble came off the worst of the 2, and then we had this for Stephen Calvert. This was just a little bit late on the lap. In fact, he was crawling already with damage, so his race had gone to a halt. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we come back to your live racing, and indeed we've still got plenty more to come here on lap 4 of 7. And right now, our leader of Keanu Litold has run away with this one. He has now got a 4-second lead, and he seems to be in control ahead of Eduardo Cavalcanti. And, well, the battle for second place now might be the bigger question mark here, if still Amaquad can get close enough. They are a second behind. They are gradually encroaching, but the 2 German drivers seem to be more focused on third place in terms of pushing each other along. I think Cavalcanti just has that natural 1-lap pace to keep them at bay as they get ready for the next braking zone. And then Amit Abid is right now in 5th place. He's got Richard Marsh still with him, and to be fair, these 2 have been working together in absolute harmony at this point, and well, I can imagine that matrimony will break by the end of what will be lap number 6. They will start to go into a battle if they can't get close to the drivers in front, but they're really working together right now, and it shows because whilst they may not be as quick as the guys in front, they are definitely doing everything they can to make sure they don't lose any time, and therefore fall backwards to the car coming up behind, which is the car, the number 7, in 7th place, quite poetically, of Lucas Tapak. But as Tapak heads on down, we have Jakob Carlson, John Bailiff and Felix Mixner behind, who completes your top 10. Mixner and Bailiff together right now. And I can tell you one thing from experience of covering plenty of racing from John Bailiff earlier this year and last year. Well, the winner of Bennett Racing driver. He is definitely a very sensible driver out there. And, well, he knows what it takes to do well at Le Mans. And right now, if he wants that top 10, which I think he definitely does, he's just wanting to work with Mixner and also Carlson in front, because I think they're all eager to try and catch up to Tapak if they can. But from there, meanwhile, we come back to Abid and Marsh taking a look up the inside. Oh, that's very sideways there for Abid. Was he tapped into the corner? He's into the barrier either way, and his race comes to an abrupt halt. And that's absolutely brutal into the race there for the man who was running 5th for so long. We're going to need to get a replay of that when we can, because that did look as though he was perhaps pushed a little bit into the corner. He's going to tow to the pit lane, as meanwhile, that promotes now Simon Bamber from a fight for 11th place into a fight for 10th place here, as he comes in towards Arnage once again. So he'll be happy with the fact the fight has now moved up a position. However, that does mean the pressure only builds on the drivers behind as they all get even more eager to try and find a way past. But will they be able to do so? We will see. As we roar the way up towards the Porsche curves. But indeed, we've now got all the pack racing going on as we look a bit further back as our cameraman tries to catch up with all the cars. And we look there to Ivan Apatov ahead of Octavian Torcia and Salvatore Guilano. And these three drivers have definitely had races that have gone backwards, not forwards, unless your name is Apatov, which he has gained 5 places since the start. But it has been a very challenging race, them all involved. As Torcia looks around the outside, Apatov going a bit defensive there. And the number 12 driver right now trying to make a move in the Tamiya-inspired machine. But car comes a little bit loose there as he makes way to the Porsche curves. Oh my good lord, that's into the barrier. The rear of the car came loose on entry. And in the end, Guilano was able to avoid being collected by Octavian Torcia. His race has already gone around once. That was, of course, on what was lap number 2 at Al Narj. We didn't quite have the story as to what happened to him there. But we now have the story there where the rear of the car just came loose into the second of the Porsche curves. And at that point, where he was really a passenger in his machine, as he drops to 18th place. He hasn't got too much damage on the car to be forced to come into the pits for repair work, but he may have to either way. Just a simple reason. That car right now is going to be even less stable. And I can imagine that he's going to be thinking to himself, what do I have to do to have a car that wants to be compliant? Well, only he can know there, but there's definitely something on the setup and indeed the condition of the car that is not clicking together. But with that, we look back from the rear of your 10th place runner here of Bamba. And as he comes down into the S's, well, right now, Bamba, Fortier, Puerto, and Fleischhauer, they're all still running within a second of each other, the quartet. They're all fighting over the 10th place spot, and Felix Mixner, meanwhile, just does not want to fall back into the clutch of this. Whatever he can do, he is doing everything to try and break away, but he has lost the Tour Bailiff in front of him, and that may be a factor in seeing Bamba potentially catch up to him and reel him on in. We will see as they continue their way down the Mulsanne. But right now, Bamba safe, and indeed, I think Fortier, Preto, and Fleischhauer all having a bit of an exchange with each other here. As we're going to see Fortier go defence to the inside. Bamba goes over with him. I think Bamba's trying to say to him, stay with me if you want to stay ahead. And Proto's going to look around the outside of both of them here into chicane. But it's all for naught, as now Fortier and Fleischhauer go too wide into the first chicane. But they all settle it back down. And in the end, Proto does get ahead of Fortier, and Fleischhauer falls to the back of the group. But I think there's going to be more exchange before this one is said and done. Coming back to the fight for second place. That's a big run wide there from Cavalcanti. That's not a slowdown, however. He will pick up an off track for that one. He's got to be careful of those, because you get enough of those, you will be picking up a drive-through penalty. But Cavalcanti running wide out the second of the Mulsanne chicanes, and I think that might be where he's pushing hard to try and make sure the two drivers behind don't catch up. The only problem is that gap that he had of a second has now been shrunk in half. And Jan Still is right there now, within 4 attempts as they break the way into Mulsanne. And at this point, now the fight for second place is well and truly on. Still Marquardt still not fighting each other. They just want to keep up with the number 2 car at this point. And Jan Still being one of our lowest rated drivers in this group, having started in 4th place, the number 22 driver here. Well, even if he finishes 3rd right now, he's on course for a huge iRating gain, given his iRating and his door number. Of course, the door number representing who's the best and who's the lowest ranked iRacer. The number 1, of course, being your highest I-rated driver in the lobby, whereas those with a number of, say, 22 all the way through to 25, with 25 cars, they're your lowest rated and the ones with the most to gain and the least to lose. Obviously, your leader, your number 1 driver, well, he's got the most to lose and least to gain here, and that's how the I-rating system works. But meanwhile, with all this going on, we've also got to look to a battle here between Bailiff and Carlson. Jakob Carlson there looking one way, then the other, as meanwhile, Felix Mixer comes roaring into camera shot. And, well, seeing these two fight into Indianapolis, that can only mean one thing for him. That's going to cost him time as Carlson dives up the inside into Arnage. He can't quite find it there as he makes about the corner, but battling with power oversteer on exit. And Carlson right now in that number 23. Well, he needs to now just get his head back down, because Felix Mixer, I think if he sees that Carlson is sliding about and looking one way then the other, then suddenly the number 18 driver is going to go absolutely all in on this one. And I wouldn't be surprised there if what we do potentially see in the end is that Carlson actually falls victim to a fight for 8th rather than a battle for 7th. But Bailiff gets it slightly wrong into the first of the Porsche curves, just washes out slightly wide, doesn't lose too much sparks flying there off of the Porsche in front, and Carlson right now continuing to follow him. But goodness me, Jakob Carlson right now, if we wanted to see a driver who is absolutely all or nothing in terms of his mentality, we have definitely seen it, as that's a mistake there from Bailiff. It's a run wide going into the Corvette curves, and it means Bailiff picks up the slowdown that he's going to have to serve by the time he gets to the forward chicanes. This is going to cost him a huge amount of time. Can he burn enough of it and keep them behind him? Well, he's got to burn it soon, because if he doesn't burn it by the time he gets to the start-finish line, that's normally where it would get upgraded into what will be a drive-through penalty. But here we go, as they make their way onwards. Bailiff has burned it. He's been able to do so. And meanwhile, Jan still behind of what is Cavalcanti. He's also picked up a slowdown. That's a Dunlop chicane that he'll have to burn in the fight for second through to fourth. Albeit he'll need to burn that before will be the exit at Tetra Rouge. Otherwise, that's going to become a drive-through. And immediately he burns it there. He realises just in the nick of time he's got to burn it. And he'll release Marquardt there and hope he can catch up. A good place to burn it being in the run to Tetra Rouge, just because you've got that fast right-hander. Where if you can stay in the draft of a car coming out of it, you will naturally gain the time back by being in the slipstream. So he's been a bit tactical with that one. But that is the fight, of course, for what is now effectively third place, because the gap to Cavalcanti has now leapt back up to 1.2 seconds. Marquardt is catching up to the second place driver, but it is going to be a long trek as we're on the penultimate lap. Meanwhile, for John Bailiff, well, after he managed to survive the slowdown through the forward chicanes, he's picked up another one coming out of Tetra Rouge, and this one's going to be a lot harder to survive in terms of holding seventh, because down the Mulsanne, you have got to burn it on a straight. You can try and get away with some of it in the chicanes, but you can't burn it all, and he's going to lose out immediately there. So there goes Carlson, there goes Mixner, here comes Bamber and Fortier. They're all on the back of this now. Suddenly, what's looking to be a two-way fight for seventh place is now none other than a seven-way fight for seventh place here. It has all been brought back together, and Bamber, Fortier and Proto, they are all looking very hungry right now. They definitely haven't been fed top 10 positions today, and right now I think they're so ravenous at this point that they're going to be trying to feast on the guys in front of them. But expect the fact that Mixer and also Carlson are not going to step aside here. This is going to get a very feisty battle, if not on this lap, then definitely on the final lap. And one can tell you one thing, down the Mulsanne straight on the final lap, anything goes until it doesn't normally when it comes to side-by-side battling. So long as they don't spin each other, you can imagine there will be paint traded. But making their way out of the second chicane, right now everyone keeps it together. And I think right now everyone is thinking this is lap 6 of 7, not lap 7 of 7. What's the point fighting too hard? Well, the answer is it gives us plenty of entertainment, as here we go, three wide. Bailiff looks to the grass there. He's got to be careful as he comes on down. And as he does so, when they get ready to go onto the brakes, Bailiff squeezes his way on the inside. Mixer there too wide with him. John Bailiff goes away. Does he get it stopped? He goes a little bit deep, but somehow, some way, he manages to keep it on the road. My good Lord, Bailiff there. All the speed he carried it. I thought that was going straight on, but not so. But I can imagine he's leant very heavy into the ABS there, and he may have heated up the front left tyre quite aggressively. But either way, that's got to be contender for one of the biggest dives of the season. As meanwhile, three wide now as they head towards Indianapolis. And well, Carlson on the left, your pitch. Oh, it's all gone wrong. Bailiff into contact with Simon Bamber. Bamber's up into the air. The car goes rolling onto its roof and comes back to terra firma. And my good Lord, it's a huge shunt at 170 plus miles an hour. And now what was 7 goes down to 5 in the battle for 7th place. And well, for Bailiff and Bamber, it's all fallen apart. But they've still got another lap after this one. This is just a build up to the final lap, ladies and gentlemen. Will they even make it to the final lap right now is the question. And well, the answer we will see, because Carlson now tries to break over Mixer and Fortier here right now is looking at this in his number 4 and thinking, okay, they've all got it wrong, time for me to get it right. However, I think Mixer is not going to play to that logic as we jump on board with the third man in the group. Oh my good Lord. And Sean Fortier, he's got so much speed at the moment in the number 4 after not setting what was a valid time in qualifying. But I imagine that right now Felix Mixner, who might be a bit of a slower driver based on his iRacing, but I'll tell you one thing, he is not slow to defend when he needs to, and he's not going to give this one up. So therefore, as they come through that left-hander, bouncing over the apex curve, Fortier right now there or thereabouts, but he is going to have to be patient with this one. Or does he go for an all or nothing move? He may go for it into the forward chicane. In fact, he waits. He doesn't do it in the first chicane, knowing that it's going to taper very close, and at the speeds they approach there, diving on the inside, you've got to be alongside immediately before you get to that braking zone, not midway. So they go on to their final lap then, as our leader's already done so. And here is your leader of Keanu Litoud, as the Frenchman right now on home soil. Well, he's definitely going to make the crowd go wild the next time he comes around, because he makes round out the corner. He just avoids the slowdown there by millimetres. He kept 2 wheels on the exit curve. I thought that was going wide, and in the end he went the widest of anybody. But right now he's absolutely flying here. He is not holding back, as Miguel Cavalcanti still has a 1.3 second lead over Joel Marquardt and Jan Steele, and he wants to keep it that way. They're keeping close to him, but they are not closing the gap rapidly enough at the moment, or are they? In fact, that gap is coming down. It's now down to 1.1 seconds. Cavalcanti's not had the best run out of Tetraruge, and Marquard's definitely got the toe there. We're still behind him. But they've got 2 chicanes and 3 straight to run before they do get to Indianapolis, plus the Molzan hairpin as well. And this is where Cavalcanti now needs to be absolutely pinpoint precise on these corner exits. If he's not, that gap is going to come down even more so, and by the time they get to Indianapolis, there will be a move on. We will see as meanwhile, Carlson, Mixer, Fortier and Proteo, they're all fighting over the 7th place spot, and now it's 2x2 as they get into the braking zone, with Tim Fleischhauer catching up behind. He's the man who's fallen back a little bit. However, I think his game plan is to simply wait, watch and see what he can get involved in here as we get closer and closer towards the very end of this one, ladies and gentlemen. It has been an absolutely crazy race thus far, and well, I suspect we've still got a little bit more left in the tank of this one as our drives all head onwards just for a little bit longer, but we will see what is to come here whilst we have got the time to unfold. And well, Carlson right now, well, he puts himself right in the middle of the road, as on one side's 40, on the other side is none other than Mixer, and in the end Mixer gets ahead, so Carlson drops back there, drops back to 8th place, but this could all be tactical for what will be the next run of the straight. And remember, you don't want to be ahead right now, you want to be ahead at the end of the straight after this. By the time you get towards Indianapolis, that's when it matters. At the moment, it's all just simply about posturing and positioning and getting the best possible corner exit. It's at the very end, come the run out of the next hairpin, that's when it is actually a problem. But as they all come on in here right now, all these drivers right now fighting as if every corner's the last one, and that's a look around the outside there from Carlson, but that's going to actually put him wide. That will give him a better run now versus Mixer, who will fall back into the pack. Meanwhile, in the fight into Indianapolis for second, Cavalcanti has been caught up to by McQuarden still, but they are not close enough to think about a move by the time they get towards Arnage. So back to the fight for 7th we go. It's 3 wide, and Fortier right now, he's on the right of your picture with Mixer on the left, Carlson in the middle. There's contact between them as well, and it's going to send what will be Sean Fortune to the barrier, but he survives it. Mixer does not, but he falls back towards Fleischhauer, and well, Proto gets ahead of all of them there, as I think Jakob Carlson initially made the contact with what was a Mixer, and then subsequently that all added up. But meanwhile, in towards the Porsche curves for second place, Cavalcanti was called, but he defends on the inside there as they make the way through. Oh my good lord, got up into 2 wheels there for a brief moment, but just survives it as he taps the wall. Cavalcanti holding off Marquard, and still just a little bit longer, but through they go. And as they emerge into the Corvette curves, what is still one driver who's leading the way quite comfortably. There he is, that's Keanu Leotard, and what a drive it has been from him after early pressure from Cavalcanti. He was able to break away, and as the checker flag waves, it is a home hero takes victory at Le Mans. Keanu Leotard takes the win by 7.3 seconds, but behind him, who will it be? It is going to be runner-up to Eduardo Cavalcanti ahead of Joel Marquardt, with Jan still just missing out on the podium. Richard Marsh, meanwhile, he's going to have a lonely end to his race, finishing in 5th place in the end, ahead of Lucas de Park, who's going to come home in 6th in short order, as he hops and skips his way through the corners there in the Kazoo Racing Porsche. But as he crossed the line, then who will be 7th? Well, it's going to be Felix Peruto, who after the incidents coming down towards Indianapolis, I think in the end a bit of peace has fallen over this group. He'll be ahead of Carlson, and there will be Sean Fortier and Tim Fleischhauer who complete that top 10, with Felix Mixner in the end surviving minus a front bumper to 11th, ahead of Adam Mika, who's had a quiet race, and then it'll be Ivan Alpatov who comes home in 13th, 5 seconds ahead of Salvatore Guilano. And well, we'll see the number 10 driver head to line here ahead of Jack Craft, and then from them the 15th place finisher, it is a further 30 seconds before we get to Octavian Torsier. And right now, well, that's a Porsche that is missing a lot of front bumper parts. He runs wide there and picks up a slowdown. It's almost as if right now it is a proverbial kick to his race. And well, the number 12 driver here just trying to survive all the way to the end. Indeed, several drivers right now heading towards the end of their races. It has not gone right as Octavian Torsier makes his way gingerly through the forward chicanes here in a car that definitely needs a lot of repair work. In fact, that front right wheel is not aligned whatsoever, but he is going to survive it in the number 12 to take 16th place. And well, I believe he was in a big shunt right at the end of the race. We'll try and get a replay of that when we can. Samuel Shepherd, meanwhile, you've got to feel for him a full start. Saw him have to come into the pit lane for what was a drive-through penalty. And for Shepherd, in the end, 17th was the best he could recover to. He never really got a chance in this one to show what he could do. And John Bailiff will come home in 18th after that huge high-speed incident between himself and Simon Bamber on the penultimate lap in the run down towards Indianapolis. The number 6 driver will be absolutely gutted with the way his race has ended, given he was looking so good for a 7th place finish, or to at least finish inside the top 10, but at those speeds, anything can happen, and it certainly did happen to Bailiff. But from him, 50 seconds behind, well, we've still got one drive to come. This will be Stephen Calvert, who is going to be the last finisher of this race. But as he makes his way on home, well, ladies and gentlemen, we take a look back at what happened between Bamber and Bailiff. Here was the big incident. So making the way on down here, and well, it was Bamber in the middle of the road, Bailiff on the right of your picture as they went through the second kink. Well, Bailiff came across there, and Bamber was on that tight inside line. I think in the end it was a convergence of lines. It's not to say Bailiff is 100% at fault for it, to be fair, but that's what the camera there would suggest, is that Bailiff turned in and Bamber was there, and he couldn't make the car disappear. However, I'm sure everyone will have their own perception of that one, as Stephen Calvert makes his way out the final corner, and well, he will finish his race live on your pictures in 19th place as he brings this race to an official conclusion. Well, goodness me, ladies and gentlemen, what 7 laps of Le Mans can be like. We have seen it in our strength field race here. Absolute entertainment from start to finish. But with the circuit falling silent, let's take a look at those race results subject to any steward's inquiries. And as we can see, after an absolutely fierce and feisty week 5 strength of field race here for the 2026 Season 1 campaign of the iRacing Official Porsche Cup by CONSPIT. It was at Le Mans. They will be a home hero in the number 1 because Chiane Liotard would take victory from pole position, 7.5 seconds clear of Edoardo Cavalcanti. Cavalcanti, to be fair, did keep Liotard honest for the opening 3 laps, but gradually the Frenchman opened up the gap and then ran away. Instead, it was the fight for second that took priority in the end, and Cavalcanti held on right at the close despite Joel Marquard's fierce chase. And indeed, the German driver working very well with his fellow countryman of Jan Still to get close at the end. We're still settling for 4th place by comparison. Richard Marsh took 5th place after enjoying a very productive race all the way through and through, with none other than the man known as Amit Abed. Unfortunately, it went wrong for Abed, and we're not quite sure whether it was contact or not at Indianapolis midway through lap number 4. Now was Lucas Tapak in 6th place in the end, and making sure to gap the rest of the field, with the rest of the field being led by 7th place man Felix Perito, ahead of Jakob Carlsen, Sean Fortier, and Tim Fleischhauer, who completed your top 10. Best of the rest in 11th was Felix Mixner, with that last lap incident cost him dear, unfortunately, and seen him not quite able to take a top 10 spot. He was ahead of Adam Mika, with Ivan Alpatov finishing in 13th place. And we saw the number 16 driver there gradually making his way back through the field after a frustrating start. Salvatore Guilano took 14th in the end, a second ahead of Jack Craft, who round off your top 15. And then it was frustrations aplenty for the following drivers who finished the race, but definitely didn't finish it the way they wanted to. Octavian Torsier missing the whole front bumper and portion of the car. Samuel Shepard in the end, given his jump start. John Bailiff as well after that huge shunt between himself and Simon Bamber in the penultimate lap. And Stephen Calvert in the end, who had it all go wrong in the early stages, was your last finisher in 19th. It was a lap down as class 5 for Simon Bamber for Effect Simulations, who finished his race in the pit lane. He was 20th. And then we did see retirements for Amit Abed, also there for Harley Keeble, Adam Morgan, Rafael Tardelli, and Adam Klanvik, who was your retiree on the opening lap. So that concludes our race, ladies and gentlemen. What a race it was, no doubt about it. But congratulations to the home hero here today of Chiane Liotard, who in the end took victory, even if he was under pressure from the rest of the podium finishers of Edoardo Cavalcanti and Joel Marquard. But as the circuit falls silent and we get ready to wrap up, there's just time for a word about our title sponsor for this series, and that is none other than CONSPIT. If you are looking to take your sim racing to the next level, then why not consider CONSPIT? As the pro driver's choice of sim racing hardware, CONSPIT offers one of the most comprehensive lines of hardware products to sim racers around the world. Whether you're in the market for wheelbases, steering wheels, pedals, peripherals, or rigs, CONSPIT's extensive experience in the motorsport industry means every one of their products is fine-tuned for success at the highest level. But do not just take our word for it. We're brand ambassadors including 2022 Grand Prix Macau GT Cup champion Luo Kaliu, 2022 Porsche Carrera Cup Asia champion Liu Ye, 2022 Chinese Touring Car Championship champion Rodolfo Avila, and 2023 GT World Challenge Asia GT3 AM Cup champions Climax Racing. You shall be in pole position for victory when you invest in CONSPIT's hardware. If you'd like to know more, be sure to head to conspit.com today. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we look ahead now to week 6. And next time out, will the thrills do not stop coming, because we will make our way to the US of A for the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, the roller coaster ride of road racing. And where you can come tune in on Saturday, the 24th of January 2026, we'll be covering our regular strength of field slot, and we'll get to see our drivers take on the ultimate thrill ride that is the American circuit in the US state of Georgia. But until then, you've been tuning into the iRacing official Porsche Cup by CONSPIT, and I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, like our drivers, remember to stay on track. Good night.